Right, it's been a little bit since the last video. So what we're looking at here is the axle. We're working on the 67 Camaro. If you haven't seen any videos before, we're doing a ridetech 4-link in this. So now what we've done is we've centered our axle, which basically you got to go by setting the drag links, the lower links, lower 4 links, I guess. They go into the spring perches. They come back both under the axle. I'll show you how that's done. And then what we have to do now is center our rear end a little better. We're off by about 1/4 of an inch. It's got to come this way. But this is where it's landing me for ride height. We'll go to the other side where it's way easier to see and the camera angle is less messed up. So this is ride height. Now they're adjustable coilovers from ridetech, so I'm sure you can go up and down a little bit. But there's like with a stock, kind of a fat 15 tire. Not real fat, but these came off of a 69 Camaro. But yeah, so this is pretty much where we're going to sit. Now nothing's, well, how would I say that? Nothing's really installed. Let's have a look underneath. It's cold in here. I'm wearing a big winter coat, so give me a second to get under the car. So basically, that's where the coilover mounts, and you can see up top. Oh, we got the light, but I guess we should turn it on. So that would just lean over into that mount up there with a couple of spacers. And I just wanted to get a shot of it in there before doing the video. I'll set that down real gentle like. So this is how they go in. You can see that it's a spring perch. You can use, depending on the year you have, you're going to have either U-bolts up here, and then here there's an inch. Some of them have 2 for the, depends if you have a mono-leaf car, because these Camaros and Firebirds were either mono-leaf or multi-leaf. The multi-leaf one comes down an inch further, so these bolts here would go an inch up, and they've got all the diagrams for that. So those perches, sorry if the jack's in the way. Let's go to that side. You can see there's a drag link, and it goes into that perch. I know it's not bolted in tight yet, but they fit pretty good. And the perch mounts to the bottom of that just as the leaf spring would. And then at the back of that, we put this piece on. Wow, the jacks are in the way, but they got to be there for what I'm doing. So those go on, and basically what I'm checking now, the measurement from this pin to this hole should be 14 3/4, and it is. Now if you look way up there, I got a little piece of wood in there, which is 8 1/2. Now ridetech has in their book, just to keep everything lined up and ride height set up, they say you can tack weld a little piece of pipe or something up in here, and it's got to be 8 1/2. So I cut the wood at exactly 8 1/2. I got a piece on each side. And then when I jack my axle up right here, till it just barely holds on, and that's how you know your ride height. And again, you can adjust it a little higher or a little lower with the coilover. Maybe it just makes it stiffer, I don't know. So this is the car. I did a video last week. You can see the whole bottom of the car is all been painted. So everything is like a satin black. And then the ridetech saddle is up in there. We did a whole video on, well, I put it in and did a video on kind of how to put it in. My opinion on this stuff is, assuming the math is engineered properly, I think it's going to be good. Now we're going to take all this off. There's new nuts for here, but I didn't want to use the the nylon nuts until I have to. I kind of prefer to use them once. They seem to bite better the first time. And this is just mock-up. And the reason why, the other thing I wanted to show you before we go into that, I don't know if I can get a shot of it. But basically, the spring perch at the front, you got to get a 5/8 bit and drill the holes out bigger so that you can put a pin, just like in the back of this one, in. It's a 5/8 hardened bolt. So you want to have that. So I mean, it should be pretty stout because it's using all the same points that the Leafs did. Now here's where it gets a little bit weird and a little bit tricky. So they say it's a bolt-in kit, but this part is not so much bolt-in. So you've got another set of links that go up here, hence the 4-link. You can see how they're going to be triangulated. I'm holding the camera straight, and you can see how that's like on a 45 inward. Now once you set this all in here, they give you this jig, and they tell you how long to bolt that, because they want the eyelet for this and that, and I guess they want you to use this jig instead of putting the piece in here, probably because it's more accurate. And then they want you to hold these tight like so, which is great, but then this kind of happens. So I'm gonna have to read the instructions on that. I've noticed if you hold them tight and pull on it and drop it, it fits beautifully right there. So I'm going to have to double check the instructions. So you might have to level this or whatever you got to do, or just place it tight. But once we tack these on, we got this little reinforcement plate. It's going to go up against this, and it just sits there, and you weld the snot out of that. You put that on too. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack these on, and I'm going to tack that plate on, and then I'm going to pull the axle out. We're going to take that to our machine shop, and I've got a guy there who's going to weld the hell out of that, and it's going to be, you know, well, professional, which is great because this is a customer's car. I am not a certified welder. I mean, I MIG weld and do all kinds of stuff, obviously, for body work and sheet metal work. But getting this little plate onto that axle and whatnot, I know sometimes axles, they weld up nice and sometimes they don't. You do it every day, you know, you be you, do what you want to do. But I'm basically going to take my MIG, get it super hot. I'm going to put 3 tacks on each side, and then make sure it's straight, put the little box, put a couple tacks on each side. I'm taking that to the machine shop. And before I take it to the machine shop, we're going to pull the diff, pull the axles and everything out to make it as light as possible, get those welded, and then we're sending this out to another place, and a guy's going to put heavy-duty axles and some kind of rear end in it. I think it's going to be I think he said a 355 with a posi, but I'm not sure. It's whatever the owner discussed with the guy building the diff. Yeah, we're not a TV show, and we don't do like in-house mechanics and all this other stuff. I'm a body restoration guy and not a mechanic, although I can do pretty much everything on these old things, but usually I don't do too much mechanical. Now the issue we had with the ridetech system, real hard to get anyone to want to do this work. So I find some of it is kind of like brackets, and it's a little bit hokey. Because I think what it is some of these pieces are engineered in a way that you can probably use it on multiple cars, which is why I think it is the way it is. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. Just, you know, you got that real nice perch, and then you got to put an aluminum thing on it, and you know, I find that kind of wonder why they didn't integrate it into the perch. But then they probably used that aluminum piece to put the shocks on whatever kit they got for Chevelles, and who knows, could be Mustangs, who knows. So I think it's going to work really well. It should, because it's expensive, really expensive. But you put your saddle in, which is nice. Now, we're not done setting that up. I'm probably going to weld those tabs in right in place. And before we take the rear end out, we also have anti-roll bars for the front and back, sway bars, whatever you want to call them, with links. And the way they work, we'll show you a picture here. This will tell you probably all you really need to know. What are we looking at? No, that ain't it. There it is there. So there's provisions for these guys in the saddle that came with the 4-link kit. So those add in, this runs through it, and then these links go in the ends, and then they drop straight down. And see these tabs here? Well, we have to weld those on as well, but they go across the back. So the nice thing about that, I can go in with a little mini grinder, clean the axle up, tack those on. So when we take it in, see, here's your tabs. And because you're close to the pumpkin, that one kind of bends in, but it also makes it real stable. But they only give you one jig, so you got to kind of do one side, move the jig over, and do the other side. I guess it keeps you from, getting weld and stuff on your upper links. Now, it's kind of like the old A bodies from the 60s. If you've got like a 67 GTO or Cutlass or any of those cars, Chevelle. The factory drag links aren't this cool, but also not adjustable. But they basically have 2 long ones down below. I don't think they're quite as long as this. I've got a 66, 67 Buick. It's a little bit of a Frankenstein. But anyway, it's got a long drag link at the bottom. And then up at the top, it's got 2 that are pretty short. So these, we had to build them. And then we go center to center, and we put them at 10 and whatever they told us to. So these are the ones that go on the top. But I think the reason you got to use the jig, let's say this is your top bolt that goes through here, and then this is your bottom bolt that goes through here. Because these are adjustable, they can turn, and you don't want to do this to it. So with the jig, it kind of keeps them relatively straight. At least that's what the instructions say, and that probably makes sense. So because of that, I don't think the plates sit perfectly flat on there. But I'm going to go over the instructions tonight and double check. But like I say, how cool is it? I think it's going to work. I've got everything set up. Tomorrow I'm going to put more time into it. We got to come this way 1/4 of an inch as far as our clearance. We measured 3/4 spots because this is a car where the whole car was done aftermarket, and it was done by somebody other than me. So we measured a spot from the frame underneath out to the drum. I measured the clearance of the tire to the top of the frame. There's a place where there's a little, like 2 pieces sandwiches together. So you want to make sure both sides everything indicates that the rear end's got to go this way just a touch, 1/4 of an inch. And the other thing I'm going to do, I have the car sitting on stands right now up here. We're going to put that scissor jack right under here. I had it there before. We got to slightly lift it up to make that level. Then we're going to jack the axle up again, perfectly level with it, and then bring it out that 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to have to mess around with it for about an hour. But once that's established, that'll be where it goes. Takes a lot of time to get it here and a lot of messing around. There's a lot of hours putting that saddle in. Now on some bodies, you can probably just jack it up in place. This was a car all put together. Pretty sure mostly Dynacorn stuff. Now that being said, things are a little weird and a little out. But it went in there. It just took a little massaging. You don't got to smash it with a hammer and dent it. You just got to kind of hit a few spots. So what I did is I put it up and down. Anywhere it rubbed, you could see a high spot. Just kind of massage it. Nothing crazy. Go in again. Now, it didn't want to go quite all the way in. We called Ridetech, and they basically said if the front's in and the back is close, they said put some shims in it. We didn't have to do that. Turns out, don't drill all your holes at once. Just do the bottom ones. Put your riv nuts in. The bolts will pull it right up into place. And then, of course, you're going to have to mark your other holes knock it down, and you literally had to put a crowbar on each side and just give it a little tap, and it basically blew out. We threw a blanket on the ground. And then the second time, it sucked right in there real easy. Everything bolted on nice and tight. So it takes a lot of time. It's not something you're going to do in a couple of nights. Maybe a weekend if you're really, really talented and you've got help. One guy by himself, a weekend, it could be, you know, you might want to get at it early is what I'm saying. It took quite a bit to get it in. But I mean, if your car is stock and true and one of the better ones out of GM, could be it just jacks right up into place for you too. Check out a few other YouTube videos. You'll see that that's not the case for many. But I think it's going to be cool. And having an adjustable 4-link, you know, and then the coilovers on the front as well, of course. So that's going to be cool. The guy that's got the front frame right now is basically building the front end while I'm doing all this stuff in the back because it needs fab work, and I've been around that stuff before. So like I say, we'll take that to the machine shop, get it welded up after. But he's going to bring the front probably this week, and we're going to roll the frame with all the stuff on it and bolt that up underneath the car. And the cool thing about that, he's got Willwood and everything on it. So once we get that on and send this axle away, it'll come back with all new guts, and we're going to put the Willwood brake kit on that. So ridetech suspension and Willwood brakes. They say this thing should handle, you know, kind of like a modern Corvette. We'll see. But anyway, it can be done. It's expensive. You know, we won't know what it's like until we're driving it around. But I think it's going to be good. The parts are quality. When you measure things, you look at how it's welded. You look at how holes are and all this. And the fit and finish is okay. It's pretty nice stuff, you know, it's not terrible. Now, that being said, if you want to upgrade your suspension and you've got an old muscle car or something, a system that we use a lot of, especially on these cars, we go to a 2-inch drop kit from Hotchkiss. Basically, it's drop springs and the leafs in the back. We've had no issue with those. And you can even add a sway bar to the back, which is pretty cool. It's a little different than this, but you put some plates. It's not that hard. The nice thing on the front, we usually go to, if you're in Canada, Gold Leaf out of Toronto. Look up Gold Leaf. Instead of going with the upper control arms that are insanely expensive and whatnot, they've got like an in-house brand that are very similar to Hotchkiss. They basically bolt right on. They've got 2 different camber settings, and they're simple. And they work. They don't seem to chew tires, and the cars drive nice. So if you got one of these, there's some easy options out there for you. You know, spend a couple grand instead of 10. Because I know what we're doing to this is a little bit crazy. We normally, like I say, Hotchkiss, and we do there's a few options for your discs on all 4 corners, but this one we're going a little more extreme on just because the budget's there for this guy that owns this car, and we can, and he's made some pretty crazy demands. So it's going to be the fastest little convertible we've ever seen. And all that suspension, everything we're doing, the rear end, pretty much everything in this car will be nut and bolt new. Even when we took the spring perches off and put them back, came with all new hardware. All new hardware went on. The reason we're being picky, we're doing a crate LS3 in this. Engine's already purchased. It was supposed to be a Tremec, I think a TKO or a TK5. I don't know. Again, I'm not a mechanic. I'm more of an old school. I had to put a 4-gear in it because I like the big old stuff. However, LS3, it may be an automatic now. The reason being they want to push a little more horse out of it, and they're thinking it might take a little bit to hang on to the car. But at any rate, whatever he decides to do is what we'll put in. Anyway, it's a pretty cool kit. Thanks for watching. Cheers.